right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second Career Conversations. Today, we're going to be focused on the top 5 resume updates to make while landing a fulfilling job. So just a few touch points before we get started. For those of you guys who did not attend last week, my name is Kelly Brucker. I'm Tech Elevator's lead pathway program director. A little bit about Tech Elevator. We are a coding boot camp in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where essentially our headquarters is. But we also have locations in Cincinnati, Columbus, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and our newest location in Philadelphia. So Tech Elevator is a coding boot camp. We take people who are career changers, who are interested in switching up their career and becoming software developers. They come to us with little to no experience in technology or coding, and we give them all the tools they need to become a software developer. So I lead up their pathway program, which is our career development program pretty much. So we have a pathway program director that lives at every single campus. And then I sit out of our Cleveland campus and work with all of our campuses on developing new content for the pathway program and pretty much serve as the lead career coach. So I'm a career changer myself. I actually started out in my career as a news reporter in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is much, much warmer than Cleveland, Ohio. But that is what I was passionate about and what I always wanted to do. I did it for about 2 years until I figured out, you know what, I'm not passionate. I'm not excited about this anymore. So I moved back to Cleveland, worked in a few odd-end jobs for a little bit, and eventually ended up as a technical recruiter for a local recruiting agency. And I loved recruiting. I loved getting to talk to people about their stories and help everyone craft their story into a resume to share with hiring managers. Eventually, I met Tech Elevator CEO Anthony Hughes at a networking event, and just hearing his passion and what he was doing at Tech Elevator, it left me really excited. And I thought to myself, you know what? One day I'm going to work for that guy and I'm going to work for that company. I did not think it was going to be that soon, but about 6 months later, the opportunity opened up for a new pathway program director for the Cleveland campus, and I literally jumped at it. Sent him a message on LinkedIn and said something along the lines of, how do I get this job? And long story short, here I am now. I started out as the Cleveland Pathway Program Director, and now I lead the Pathway Program across all campuses. And it's something that I'm truly, truly passionate about. I can honestly say that I love my job. I enjoy coming to work every day. Even though I'm not in a physical office right now, I enjoy signing on every day. So just a few logistical things before we get started. So for those of you guys who've never used Zoom before, you should see my video or some video somewhere on the screen. If you hover your mouse above it, you'll see a black bar with a few different options. So if you only want to see my video or whoever is speaking, you can click on the single box. If you don't want to see any video, you can select the little dash to the left of the single box. If you want to see a row of videos, you can select the 2 boxes that are stacked on top of one another, or you can select the gallery view, which will show as many videos as possible. So that is up to you. Also, if you have not yet, if you could please mute your audio just to eliminate any background noise from any kids or pets that you guys might have at home. Our director of marketing, Andrea, is managing our chat. So please feel free to introduce yourself on there. If you have any questions at all during the presentation, if you could share them on chat, Andrea is going to collect all these questions and we'll save them for the end for a Q&A. And then finally, we are recording this session, so you should have received a notification about that. If you want to review this recording later, we will be emailing that out to everybody at the end of the session. All right, so let's get started. As I said earlier, this is our second Career Conversations webinar. Last week, we held one on what to do if you've been laid off, steps to take if you're looking for a job. Today, we want to focus on the top 5 resume updates and tips to make in order to land a fulfilling job. So resumes are so important. Resumes serve as your first impression on the job search. And guess what? You only get one chance to make that first impression. So it's so important to stand out, but you want to stand out for the right reasons. Your resume is what gets you in the door, but you have to do the work from there. So let's talk about how you get in the door. I want to share 3 stats that I like to share with our students at Tech Elevator. The first one is something we talk about quite a bit with our students. So 6 seconds. 6 seconds is the average amount of time that a recruiter will look at your resume upon first glance, I should say. So you have 6 seconds worth of time for a recruiter to look at your resume and them deciding, am I going to bring this person in for an interview or not? So that's all you get. So it is so important to stand out with the resume that you're putting forward. Second stat, on average, a job opening attracts 250 resumes. And of all those resumes, only one of them gets selected for the position. And then finally, this is my favorite stat and most important. 77% of hiring managers immediately disqualify resumes because of grammatical or spelling errors. And I can say that I have thrown out a resume if I see too many spelling errors, formatting issues, grammatical errors, because to me, it shows me that if they're not going to put the time and effort into putting forward a good resume, how good are they going to be in the role that I'm hiring for? So keep those stats in mind as you're making those updates to your resume. So our first update tip, highlight your experience. Now you might be thinking, well, obviously that's what I'm doing in my resume, but this is important because you want to make sure you're highlighting the right experience. So you don't want to highlight the basic functions of your role. So how you can determine what those basic functions are is just look at a job description for a role that you're applying for and look at what the basic functions are. So you shouldn't be listing those necessarily on your resume. You want to focus on what you specifically accomplished at that company in that role that nobody else in that role accomplished. So to help you do this, I want you to create a list, just one list, and start to list out all of the projects that you worked on, all the projects that you led, anything that you were involved in, any awards you received, any major accomplishments. And then go into more detail. What were your specific responsibilities for that project, for that specific task? What did you do that nobody else did? And what was the result? So again, what did you do that nobody else did? What stood out about you in that role? So really think about this and take some time to really focus on that. And then once you have that list, take that and use an action word to turn it into a bullet. And really maximize the first 5 words of that bullet. So you should be using action verbs or power words. So try to avoid saying things like responsible for. That's actually one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm looking at resumes and I'm looking down at experience and I see 6 bullets that all start with responsible for, responsible for. It shows a lack of effort. And if you look at that bullet, you can probably think of a really good action verb to start out with that's going to be a lot more creative than responsible for. So some good action verbs to work into your resume are achieved or accomplished, completed, or earned. Really think about some strong action verbs and try to use a different action verb for every single bullet. Also, I realize that many of you might have the same job, but it's 5 different companies. For example, if you're a marketing manager and you've been a marketing manager at the last 5 companies you've worked at, there might be a lot of overlap or similar bullets. So take a look at your resume. If you have the same or very similar bullets in almost every company, think about how you can rework that so it's different for every company. Again, really focus on what you did in that role, what you did at that company that was specific to you, that really stood out. So once you've focused on your experience, go back into that experience and try to pull out specific keywords or tools. So this is really important because this is what recruiters are going to be searching for when they're looking for candidates. So if you're not sure where to start with keywords, look at a few job descriptions. Again, looking at job descriptions for roles that you're applying to is going to be really helpful. Now, don't add keywords and tools to your resume unless you are familiar with them, because I promise you, if you're lying on your resume, the hiring manager will find out. Maybe not in the hiring process, but once they hire you, and that's not going to make you look good. So only include keywords and tools on your resume if you can truly speak to them or you have experience in them. So for example, when I say tools, that might be something like Microsoft Office Suite or Photoshop. Some keywords, those might be content marketing or data analytics. So really make sure you're showcasing these keywords throughout your experience section and even in your summary. Now, a lot of you, similar to myself, might be career changers or maybe pivoting into a brand new role. So if you have experience in something that is not applicable to what you're looking for, you don't have to use those keywords. So for example, I mentioned earlier that I used to be a news reporter. So I had experience with editing softwares like Final Cut Pro and various video equipment. So I no longer would include that on my resume because it's not relevant to my career search as a career coach. I also don't really use words like investigative reporting or news writing because, again, it's not really relevant. So you don't have to use keywords that are no longer relevant to what you're looking for. Why are keywords so important? So recruiters are going to do something called a Boolean search. You don't have to know exactly what a Boolean search is, but essentially it is where a recruiter will put in a few keywords. So for example, content marketing and Photoshop. And those are two things that are really important to the candidate that they want to hire for this role. And they will do their Boolean search, and any resume with those keywords on there will show up in their search. So from there, they're going to scan those resumes and look, do I see these keywords? And how were they using these tools or skills? Were they using it how I'm looking for this candidate to use them? If so, they'll probably put you in the yes pile. If not, they might move on. Also, you'll want to make sure to use these keywords on your LinkedIn profile as well, because they'll also be doing these searches on LinkedIn in addition to your resume. So update number 3, keep it consistent. This is so important. Formatting is really, really important for your resume. So when I say consistency, keep it simple. If you're using sections, which you absolutely should because that keeps the formatting clean and simple, so use sections like professional experience, summary, skills, education to break it up. And if you're using lines to break up those sections, make sure that you're using a line to separate every single section. Also, this might sound silly, but make sure you're using the same font size and the same font style and spacing throughout. Again, seems silly, but I've seen quite a few student resumes when I'm reviewing them during the cohort, and I'll see a lot of inconsistencies with that. And like I said earlier, it just shows a level of laziness. So you want to be very careful and meticulous when creating the formatting. If you're unsure how it looks, print it out. Convert it to a PDF and see how it looks. So a very common mistake that I'll see is students will convert their resumes to a PDF. And even though it might be one page in Google Docs or Microsoft Word, when they convert it to a PDF, it'll be one page plus a second page with just one line trickling over. So be really careful with this. And that's how printing it out or converting it to a PDF will help. Because if you see anything like that, you can easily avoid some of that wonkiness. So keep the formatting consistent. I mentioned a lot of different tips to help with this. Another thing, don't use any crazy fonts. So keep the font simple. Don't overcomplicate it. There's so many fonts that are easy on the eyes. Arial, Tahoma, Proxima Nova, Helvetica. Keep it really simple here. Don't get too crazy. And avoid too much color. I honestly like a little bit of color in the contact info just to make it pop a little bit and stand out. Feel free to use a different font there if you want as well, but don't use too much color anywhere else on your resume. Again, keep it as simple as possible on the resume. No color. Don't overcomplicate it. I want to talk a little bit about ATS systems. So ATS systems are applicant tracking systems, and a lot of companies, a lot of big corporations specifically, will use these to scan and sort resumes. So that's exactly what an ATS system is doing. You're sending it in to the job posting, and then an ATS system is going to scan it to see, okay, does this person have keywords that I'm looking for? Which, going back to the other slide, that's why keywords are so important on a resume. And then they're going to look for it, how long you were in the job, if a degree is applicable, if you have that degree, and it's going to sort it into the yes or no pile. So in last week's meeting, somebody asked how can I know if my resume is making it through an ATS system? So here's a really simple solution. All you have to do is save your resume as a plain text file and look at it. So take a look at what it looks like as a plain text file. If you had any tables, charts or images, that right away is going to mess with how it goes into an ATS system. Otherwise, just look to make sure the formatting is the same. All of your words that were on the original resume are still there. If there's a lot missing, or if it's a completely different format, or missing out on some specific sections, then you probably have to go back and work on formatting it. And then finally, length. Try your very, very best to keep it to 1 page. I know people who have 30 plus years of experience who've been able to get their resume to 1 page. And then I have people with less than 5 years of experience who feel that they need a 3-page resume. I promise you, you do not need a 3-page resume. You don't even need a 2-page resume. You should be able to fit most of your experience on 1 page. Now, if you have more than 15 to 20 years of experience, you can go to 2 pages, but absolutely no more than that. When I was recruiting, and even as I'm doing interviews internally for Tech Elevator, I rarely will go and look beyond the first page of a resume. And if I see more than 2 pages, I definitely won't look beyond that. You can easily condense it. You don't have to include every single position that you've ever held. Just include the last 3 to 5 years. Again, keep in mind LinkedIn. You can showcase all of your experience on LinkedIn, but you don't have to showcase every single thing you've done on your resume. Like I said earlier, your resume is your first impression, and you only have 6 seconds to make that first impression. All right, so passion. This is so important. Again, this is something we really talk with our students about. How our students show their passion is through the side projects they work on. So at Tech Elevator, they'll have to work on a few required projects, but a lot of our students are so passionate, so excited about software development, that they'll actually go on and work on a side project. In addition to whatever they're doing 40 hours a week at Tech Elevator, they'll go home and work late hours on a side project and put that on their resume. And I can guarantee that those are almost always the students who get jobs first, because hiring managers see that and they're like, wow, this person loves coding so much that when they have free time, that's what they're doing. And I'm not saying you have to use all of your free time to do something like that, but it definitely helps. So maybe you're making a career change and you want to showcase experience for a job that you're looking for that you might not have in a professional capacity. For example, when I was in college, I was really interested in potentially looking at PR as a career if broadcasting didn't work. I didn't have any PR or social media experience. So my dad, who's a realtor, actually asked me if I wanted to help him with some of his marketing for his website. So I worked on helping him write some of the content for his website and helped him with his social media. I didn't get paid for it, but it was something that I was able to add to my resume. So think of different things that you could do. Is there somebody in your network that maybe you could help with? Or reach out to a nonprofit. Nonprofits are great. So in addition to working at Tech Elevator, in my spare time, I'm the local chapter president of Cleveland Women in Technology, or Get With It. And we actually were just looking for somebody to work as a volunteer. So it's an unpaid position, just a few hours a week to help with our social media and marketing. and we didn't require any experience. We just wanted somebody who truly wanted to help. So that's a great way to get some extra work on your resume. Reach out to some nonprofits because I'm sure they'll appreciate the extra help, and they often can't pay for these roles. So if you want some extra work in something that you don't have experience in, like I said, reach out to a nonprofit, or think of your volunteer experience that you have. Is there anything that you've done in a volunteer capacity that you could add to your resume that would help showcase some experience as well? So think about all these different things. And then finally, most important tip, proofread, then proofread again, and then give it to somebody else to proofread. So you should be proofreading your resume at least 2 or 3 times. And then I want you to find at least 2 people. You really should try to look for 3 people. Give them your resume. They might be able to give you some extra tips. They might be able to help you with rewording a specific bullet on there. They might catch a grammatical issue or a spelling issue that you didn't catch. They might find a formatting issue. You never know. So even if you're looking at it and you're like, wow, this looks amazing, it really does help having 2 or 3 extra people look at it. And you want them to focus on a few things. Overall, is it readable? Does it look good? Is the formatting consistent? Any spelling or grammatical errors? And then, ask them, where did your eyes get drawn to first? Where was the first section you looked at? And then think, is that the first section you want a recruiter to look at? If not, then you might want to think about how you're reworking your resume. And bonus tip, you might need a unique resume. So again, one of the questions that came up last week was about having a more unique resume. Maybe you're going into a graphic design or a role as an illustrator. So in that situation, maybe you do want a more colorful, more unique format. So that is okay in that situation. Another example, sometimes our students, when they graduate from Tech Elevator, they might be interested in software development roles, but they might also be interested in like a business analyst or a more functional role. So in that situation, I would definitely recommend having 2 different resumes. A business analyst is going to be more on the gathering requirements, working with people, that side of things. Whereas the software development side, that's more on the technical problem solving side. So they might want to have 2 different resumes depending on what role they're applying to. Another thing I want to add in here, a lot of people ask me about using their photo on a resume. So there are 2 jobs you need a photo for if you're going into a career in acting and if you're going into a career in modeling. Otherwise, do not include your photo. You do not need it. It honestly might create a certain level of discrimination in the hiring process, and you don't want that. So be really careful. Like I said, unless you're going into a career in modeling or acting, you really don't need a photo on your resume. And then finally, before we get into questions, we do have some events coming up. So next week, we will have a live panel discussion with some people from our network, some HR managers. We've got somebody from Cover My Meds, BNY Mellon, National General Insurance, and a few others. So we'll be talking with experts about best practices for remote interviewing and even remote onboarding and how they've been conducting business since everything with COVID-19. The week after, on the 29th, we will be taking a deep dive into using LinkedIn for your job search. And actually, tomorrow we have an event too at 3 o'clock, I believe. Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, where we'll have a panel of some of our alumni from Tech Elevator talking about life as a career changer. So even if you're not interested in a career in software development, it'll be a really interesting panel for anybody who is a career changer or is using this time to pivot careers. And then finally, we do have some open houses coming up. So if you have an interest in Tech Elevator, want to hear more about our program, we do have some open houses today at noon, 5, and 7:30. Although they are at various campuses, they're not super campus specific. So if you live in Cleveland and you want to attend the Cincinnati one, that's totally fine. You'll still get the same level of content. And then finally, over the last month, our amazing marketing team has created a brand new section of our resume, our website, excuse me, so caught up in talking about resumes here, called Career Resources. So if you go to techelevator.com/career resources, you'll find all kinds of wonderful content around resumes, interviewing best practices, LinkedIn, and more. So feel free to check that out as well.